Well, hello, this is Jeff Gaudiosi, and you're on MisplacedStraws.com, where music comes to life. And my guest today has been making music with his band Night Ranger for almost 40 years. Their music has literally become part of the culture, and they're still going strong. Night Ranger is about to release its 13th record called ATBPO, short for And the Band Played On. It's such an honor to welcome drummer, vocalist, writer, and founder of Night Ranger, Mr. Keagy. Welcome, Kelly.
Hey, buddy, how are you? Thanks for taking my call.
Well, thank you. It's really excited to talk about this record. It's out everywhere August 6th, and the title is an ode to what we've all been through the past year and a half. But I think it also sums up Night Ranger over the course of the last 40 years. What does ATBPO mean to you?
Well, I mean, when we started to put the songs together, it was all about we couldn't get together, and COVID was raging everywhere. We couldn't fly anywhere to get together and play in a room together. So we started sending clips around to each other and ideas and this and that, and it was just so frustrating because playing together is what bands do. That's how you create together. And so, when it got down to it, we realized that we did have the sense to be able to put this together over the internet and, and the means to do it. And we were just, kind of shocked at the way things started coming together. And so, that was a newfound energy for us, and that's how we came up with the title.
And you guys have been doing this a long time, and you get set in your approach on how you make a record, and you just said how with this one, kind of all of that was out the window. Were there any nerves when it came to trying to write and record in such a different manner?
The fact that we had to be forced to do it over Zoom, over just sending your phone, clips and, audio-wise and stuff like that. So, I mean, I really think that it was kind of a blessing in disguise because, we had to do something totally different than we normally do. We start out with the three of us getting in a room together and just jamming out ideas, and this wasn't possible. This was the weirdest thing ever. So I think what it is it made us be creative in a different way.
And for me with this record, it's begging to be played live. I mean, tracks like Hard to Make It Easy, Can't Afford a Hero, Coming for You.
Right.
When you listen to them, you could picture the band playing them on stage. With all the time that went on, where these songs just kind of sat while the world was closed and having to record them in a new way, were you worried that you'd lose some of that live feel and energy that really marks a great Night Ranger song?
Of course. And that was the first thing that we thought of is like, how are we going to recreate this? But it took imagination. It took the energy from the songs themselves. So the songs kind of, when they started coming out, the choruses really started to like, I can't wait to get in there and play this kind of idea to everybody. So, I went into a studio in Mesa and played, I had Ken Mary, record the drums so I didn't have to engineer it. That was the first time in a long time. I usually do my own, and everybody else, was at home. So once we had the song, I guess what I'm trying to say is that the energy actually came out of those choruses and was begging to be played like they got played. So, and we've always been a live band. That's how we got started. Before we wrote any songs together, we were playing live. So I think that we had to have that imagination of okay, let's make these slave reels that I'm going to be playing to sound like the guys are sitting right next to me. And our engineer Anthony Fox did that. He put them together, and it sounded like the guys were just, for some reason, it just really felt like they were there. And I had to use my imagination, so that's how it came about.
You there? I think I lost you for a second.
Yeah, I'm there.
Okay, there you go. Yeah. Yeah, well, and, this is the second record that the band's done with Kerry Kelly on guitar, and is a big fan of both Night Ranger and Kerry's work with bands like Alice Cooper and the Newly Deads and Big Bang Babies. My first thought when I heard that he was coming in the band was, well, that's interesting. But 2 records in now, he was a perfect choice. I think he really brings an energy and an edge to the band. How did you guys find and decide on Kerry?
It came about a few years ago when Joe was departing to go to Whitesnake, and we needed to find somebody for a tour in Canada over the off season when Joel would go and play, do other gigs. Mm-hmm. So we originally used Kerry for that tour up in Canada with Loverboy and Journey, and it was no rehearsal. And what we did was we got on call with him. It wasn't called Zoom back then, but it was something. And we had him play the solos live, the parts that he was going to be playing. And it was so apparent to us that this guy could play, not only play, but he had a style of his own that he was adding into the parts. Mm-hmm. And so we were like, this guy's great, man. Let's just get him in there. Let's do this tour, and we'll go from there. And sure enough, he was a perfect choice because we all really got on board with Kerry Kelly.
Yeah. And, looking back, the history of the band is well documented, but just to kind of jump around a bit, I've talked about this in other interviews. I love digging into sort of the geographic scenes in rock. And you guys are a Bay Area band, and the history there from, the Dead to Jefferson Airplane, Santana, Journey, Sammy Hagar and Montrose to you guys, what was it like coming up in that scene and sort of fighting for stage time with so many incredible bands?
Well, we actually, we befriended Bill Graham back in the day because Fitz was in, he played with Montrose, he played with Sammy Hagar, and both like that. So Bill Graham was always around. In the early stages of the band, he would come see us and put us on some shows, and we had no record out, and we were just unknown. And even brought us on stage and announced us. So we were like, are you kidding me? Bill Graham just announced us on stage. We're him, we even though we weren't at that time, we felt like we were. Right. And then we tried to get Bill Graham's management to manage us. And, it didn't quite work out, but we still had friends there and stuff like that. So I think kind of coming up in the world with those people around, encouraging us was a big part of it. Because, when you get put on a show, it's a stadium show, and nobody knows who you are, and you have to go out there and make it happen, and make them, get on board with you. That's a big deal, and it also brings the group closer together. Like, you become this one mind, and that's how it got started in the beginning.
And when Dawn Patrol came out, it was a hit, but then things seemed to get bigger and bigger with Midnight Madness and Seven Wishes. And I have to say, the one thing that always drew me to the band was that you guys always kept the writing in the band. At that time in the 80s, it seems that once a band had a hit record, the labels brought in, the Desmond Childs of the world to write the follow-up for you. Exactly. Was there a fight to keep the writing within Night Ranger, or did the label trust you guys to do it?
They did for a while until we got to, we started to get some of these, movie soundtracks and stuff like that. And so then when we actually got to the last record we did in 1988, and it was called Man in Motion, and they brought in a writer to do this song called I Did It for Love, right? And we were like, wait a minute, because we turned most of the song, we turned the album in without a ballad, and they were like, wait a minute, you can't have a Night Ranger record without a ballad. We're trying to expand and grow and whatever. So Jack and I, we went back and wrote the song Restless Kind, where they wanted a ballad, and they loved the song, but they ended up putting out I Did It for Love, and, which was a Russ Ballard song, and we're like, this is terrible. What is wrong with the songs that are on the record, And for some reason, they just turned against what we were doing internally, So at that point, we realized that, in order for us to be true to what we know and love of this band to be and how we grew up, is we had to keep it within ourselves. We had to write all the songs. We had to believe in the songs. That's the thing. When somebody brings you a song, it has nothing to do with your feelings, your emotions, your stories. Has nothing to do with that. It's that guy's idea. It's his story. And I get it. Sometimes it works. But I think in that situation, it didn't work at all.
And that record, Man in Motion, was sort of a watershed for the band. I mean, you began to see your first lineup change when Fitz left. And music as a whole, I think, began to change right around then toward the end of the 80s. Did you guys feel, with what you just said about the record label, that things were kind of starting, the fortunes of the band were starting to change a bit?
Sure, absolutely. I mean, we could see it. They hired Keith Olsen to do that record, which was a joy because I think that Keith, at that point, was in a good point in his life because he had got sober, so he was like really clear thinking, and he was. But I think at the same time, even though he was thinking clear and everything, he didn't really spend much time with the songs. And I always think a producer's got to get in there and help you, see that vision of those songs and help you almost write it sometimes, which is fine because it ends up being better. But he didn't get personally involved in the songs. We just went in there and recorded them exactly like we had done them in rehearsal. And I think that they lacked some of that like outside ear stuff that producers are supposed to bring in, And so I think that's, we started to see kind of that, disappointment in, how the song, the collection was looking as a whole for an album. Some of the songs just didn't quite, hit it,
And, after that, you guys had a few turbulent years, with Jeff Watson leaving and Jack Blades leaving for a while, and sort of the trio version with you, Brad, and Gary Moon. But then eventually everybody came back for the Neverland record. But the reunion with Neverland in 7, it didn't quite hit the way a lot of fans were hoping it would. And, I mean, part of that, I think, has to do with just a totally different musical landscape from when you guys had last played together. But were there still sort of tensions in the band that kind of kept that reunion somewhat short-lived?
Well, I think what it did was we were kind of refamiliarizing ourselves, with how, plus, music was changing, so we were trying to bring some of those elements in, and, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And after being apart for a while, we were kind of like, well, what is this going to be? How are we going to do this? And it might have been thrown together maybe a tad quickly, maybe at that point. But we did have Sony on board and John Codner was the bat for us, at the label because he loved a lot of the songs that we came up with for that album, but he couldn't convince the label to get on board with it because a lot of those people had changed and they weren't the same people, that were working in the 80s. And, a lot of young people didn't even know who we were. I mean, it was like John said he had a meeting and they played the songs and didn't give up the name and played the songs. And everybody was like, yeah, these sound like his songs. Who is it? Night Ranger. It was like, would they be willing to change their name? They thought we were a new band, you know. Yeah. And so that's when we started to notice that things were like a little odd now. Where do we fit in anymore, and stuff like that. And we realized we just had to make ourselves happy. Mm-hmm. Once we started to do that, the songs started to come better and better, and the albums were better. You know, and we did experiment, with modern music a little bit on the album following Neverland, and which was kind of cool. I thought some of those songs were really good. There's some really good songs in that on that album too. But you know what I'm saying? We're still trying to find our way and kind of start over again. You know.
And then after that, I mean, you guys kind of took a break for a little bit, although you stayed on the road, but came back in 2007 recording-wise with Hole in the Sun. And since then, you guys have just been on a roll. And, ATBPO is really continuing that streak of strong records. You're at the top of your game live. I caught you on the tour with Sammy Hagar in 2019. You guys were amazing. I mean, what do you point to as sort of the catalyst for that creative success that you guys have hit this past decade?
Well, I think it's just what I was hinting at before is that we can take that break after that record, and what we did is we got back in touch with playing live again, and that transferred over into playing in the studio together better and writing better songs, because you go out and play all those shows together, you get so tight, and you realize that you want to make a record again. There's that need to write and create some new songs and go back in with that energy you have from the road. So I think that's what brought us back. So back in the beginning again, we had to start over again. It was all the live playing that we did in early on that got us in the studio to do Dawn Patrol, Madness, and Seven Wishes. We're just playing every night.
And speaking of playing live, I mean, you guys have a bunch of dates on the books over the next few months as things begin to open up. But we're also hearing a lot of concern about, variants and possibilities of having to roll things back again. How have these first few shows gone for you? And you guys kind of worried at all about having to pause the tour once you get going?
Yeah, hopefully that won't happen. We're just going to just keep our head down and hopefully, things don't. But ultimately we want everybody to stay well and be safe. So whatever happens, at least we got to play some of these shows and we got that energy back again, to want to just keep going, because God, some bands, they might want to just hang it up, and just wait this thing out. But we couldn't do that. We got some offers even in the middle of COVID. We went out and played Sturgis of all cases, I mean, it was like being in a Road Warrior movie, because it was like, hey, man, there's no COVID out here, pal. These people are ready to play, So, I mean, but if it happens, God forbid. I mean, they'll get that booster out there, and maybe it'll knock it out quick. But whatever happens, we just want everybody to be safe and well.
Well, we've been spending some time here with Keagy of Night Ranger. The new record called ATBPO, and the band played on. It will be out everywhere August 6th. I know you guys got some really cool physical copies, some colored vinyl and stuff like that. It'll be streaming everywhere. It's a great record. I've been listening to it a lot since I was able to get a copy. Like I said, it's a record that begs to be played live. So I'm hoping I can catch you on the road when you come out toward the East Coast at some point.
Awesome.
Kelly, thank you so much. It's been a true pleasure talking to you and going through the history of one of my favorite bands. So thank you very much.
Thanks so much for the kind words, and look forward to meeting you in person, man.
You got it. As soon as you make it out here to the Northeast, we'll be right there.
All right, buddy. Take care.
You got it. Thanks, Kelly. Yep. Bye.